I'm Kathy Olligus from Dee's, and today I'm going to show you several styles of ribbon roses and how to create them. When you finish your ribbon roses, you can add them to your projects, such as this hat that we've done for the Kentucky Derby. We actually use two different styles of the ribbon roses in the hat, and of course along with some feathers and other types of ribbon. So I will show you how to do this curled gathered rose first, and then this rose down here second, and of course you can use them together on your project. For this style of rose, we need some ribbon that has a wire in the edge that runs through the outer edge. And we need about a yard. You might use a little bit less than that, but I always start with about a yard so I don't run short when I'm working on my rose. So the edge of this ribbon has a small, thin wire. We want to grab the wire and pull it out a little bit. I usually use my scissors. You can use a pair of needle nose pliers to grab the wire. And this side we're going to pull out about 1 inch, and we're going to fold it back on itself. So then we go to the other end on the same side of the ribbon, and we pull that wire. It doesn't pull all the way through. Use my scissors again to grab the wire, just to get it started, and then we're just going to use this wire to gather our ribbon. So pull the ribbon all the way to the other end, and you pretty much want to gather it as tight as the wire will allow. So I'm just basically sliding the ribbon along the wire. Very easy to do. Now, when we get it gathered up as tightly as we can, we're going to start with what would be the center of the rose. We have a raw edge here we want to take care of first. So I'm going to bring this corner down to match this corner, and I'm going to use the wire that we have to wrap around the ribbon, the ends of the ribbon, pretty tightly, and that will be the center. You can cut part of this wire off. You'll need some of it, but you can cut some of it off to make it a little easier. Now we're going to straighten our ribbon up a little bit. We're going to take the center of our rose and we're going to start rolling it. And we're rolling right on top of the other gathers. You can stop and kind of see how it's already forming the rose. Now if you would like, as you go, you can use some glue to glue those edges together so they don't come apart while you're still rolling. I'm going to roll the whole thing first, and then I'm going to go back and glue. So I'm just lining up my gathers. You can see the front of the rose. And then at the end, again, I have a raw edge, and I want to bring that raw edge down here. I will do that in just a second. I will put a little glue on here first. You can tell I had all those rows, just a coil of ribbon. The wire's all even, flat. And then what I'm going to do now is go back and put a little glue on the edge first. And then I'm just going to add a little glue all over the bottom to glue those edges together. And then we'll let that cool and dry. Okay, so our glue now is cooled and set here, so we want to finish off this raw edge. And all we're going to do is add just a little bit more glue so we can bring that edge to the back. So now we have a nice finished edge. So this can be done with, this is a 2.5 inch ribbon. You can use 1.5 inch, 1 inch, and that of course will determine the size of your rose. Let's say this just matches your project and you want to use this ribbon. It doesn't have a wired edge. Your option is to have a needle and thread and do a running stitch along one edge and use that as your wire to pull the gathers and gather along the thread instead of the wire. But with this ribbon I'm going to show you a little bit different looking rose. So instead of just gathering the one edge, we're going to fold it in half. We're going to start at the fold. I'm using black thread just so that you can see the contrast and see where the stitches are. I'm taking large stitches, several at a time, and then pulling. And then after we come down that side, we will go the length of the ribbon and do that gathering stitch. And you can gather several on the needle at one time. And then we won't pull too tight until we're ready to gather along the thread. And again, we start out with about a yard of ribbon. Now when we finish the whole yard, we can gather by pulling the thread. And you can see where the center, because we gathered from that tip down to the other side, it forms our nice little rose center. It gives a little different look. You know what idea what that's going to look like. So I'm going to go on and finish gathering this. You can tell it doesn't have to be too perfect. Stop right about there. Pull the thread, gather it. Now at this point, you can see kind of zigzaggy. I'm going to have to straighten it up a little bit. It's going to look very similar to the other. Everything will be lined up in the back. We'll add a little bit of glue there in a minute. And we will need to, if you want to, since you have a needle and thread on there, to hold all this together, you could take a couple stitches in the back. Later we can add some glue too, but just to hold it for a minute. You can take a stitch. And then you also want to gather from this tip up to the fold to get rid of that raw edge. And now pull the raw edge to the middle of the rose. And that's our finished rose. A little different edge than we had with the road wired ribbon. To finish this off, we can also just go back to the back now and add a little bit of glue to seal that edge. You can add some leaves if you want, or something that basically looks like a leaf, by making a small bow out of green and add that behind the rose. Another way to make a leaf, you can take a small piece of ribbon. This one's wired, a little bit easier to work with the wired ribbon. Gather it in the center between your fingers and then give that a twist so it's gathered and twisted, and then bring these ends together. Flatten it out. You put a piece of wire around the edge on the ends here, and that gives us another type of leaf that we can add to match our rose. You can add a couple of those probably to each rose. These are examples of the last style of rose. This ribbon can be wired but doesn't have to have a wired edge to it. It's a little different, a little more angular than, let's say, the satin rose that we made. It can also have this look depending on the ribbon. The ribbon will determine the look of the rose. Okay, this rose I'm going to show you right now is actually a folded rose as opposed to a gathered rose. To do this example, we're going to use a piece of grosgrain ribbon, about 1 yard long. So we don't have to have needle and thread, we don't have to have a wire, because we're going to fold the entire rose. We start by folding the ribbon with a small, maybe 4-inch tail in a 90-degree angle. Lay it down on the table, and then we're going to always be flipping this ribbon back a 90-degree angle again. We'll form a point each time. Flip it 90 degrees. See how the ribbon is side by side, not overlapping. And then 90 degrees. Just keep your hand on it to keep it from coming apart. Flip it backwards. You can see in the center we form sort of a hole. That's where our ribbon end will go through to form our rose. Each time we're doing exactly the same thing. 90-degree angle. Go to the end of your ribbon, with leaving another 4-inch tail. So you have a little bit of ribbon to work with to put it through the hole. Okay, so I have a little bit of ribbon here. I'm going to hold on to the whole thing so it doesn't come apart. If your hole has disappeared, you'll need to use maybe a pair of scissors to find the hole. Just spread it out a little bit. Now you can see it. Push the ribbon point through the hole. Sometimes you'll lose it. You have to just work it through the hole, pull it down. That'll be the center of your rose that you're forming right now. Now you're going to put here's the ribbon that we just put through the hole. Just kind of hold it with your fingers, because we're going to be turning that, and we're holding on to this with our thumb because we don't want it to all fall apart while we're turning. We're going to continue twisting the ribbon in the same direction so that it turns and forms our rose. And when you get it tight enough, you're going to take this piece of ribbon, the one we started with, and bring it to the back also. Gather in between your fingers, and then just use a piece of wire to hold it all. Twist that around tightly. If you want to adjust the points, if they tend to line up with each other, you can just move them a little bit. And that is our folded rose. These are all done the same way. And again, the ribbon is what's making them look a little different, the style of the ribbon. These ribbon projects ribbon roses are fairly simple to make. But if you need help, you might want to come into the store, see our samples, see what we've done with the roses, how we've decorated some projects, and get a little personal help if you need it. Thanks for watching another instructional video from Deeds.